Welcome, everybody. I'm Lori La Bey. I'm with Alzheimer's Speaks, and today we are on Dementia Chats. And Dementia Chats, for those of you that don't know, is a panel of the true experts, those really living with a form of dementia. And today's topic, we're going to talk about the weather and the effects of it, and you're going to get some great insights. You're going to see how it affects everybody a little bit different. But before we get started, we're going to go around and have everyone introduce themselves. Again, I'm Lori La Bey. My own mother lived with dementia for 30 years, so that's my background. And Mark, would you mind kicking us off?
Thank you, Laurie. My name is Mark Timmons. I live in Massachusetts, a town south of Boston. I'm 54 years old, and I was diagnosed in 2019 with early onset Alzheimer's. But right now, we're kind of just calling it early onset dementia, as the doctors debate, just which type of dementia I have. And thank you for having me here.
Okay, great. Kate, how about you?
Oh, hi. My name is Kate Lau. I live in Illinois, and I'm originally from Malaysia. I was diagnosed in 2014, so I don't know how many years that is, because one of the first things that was robbed from me was counting money, numbers, and telling time. And second was all my executive skills are gone. But other than that, I'm fine. And I have a BV, FTD, which is, to be clear, behavior variant frontotemporal dementia.
Thank you. Lori?
I'm Laurie Scherer, and I was diagnosed in 2013 with early onset Alzheimer's and FTD, frontotemporal dementia. And I live in Alabama.
Wonderful. Christine, how about you?
Hi, everyone. I'm Christine Telker. I live in Canada, actually. I'm a little north of all of you. I live in British Columbia. I have vascular dementia. I was diagnosed in 2015.
Okay, thank you. And Karen?
Yeah, I'm Karen. Diagnosed in 2014 initially with Alzheimer's, early onset. Got changed to unspecified symptoms of dementia about 10 months later. And now I am called mild neurodegenerative disorder with probable dementia.
Thank you. True?
Full legal name is Truthful Loving Kindness. I live in the Northern California Redwood Coast. My symptoms first became very noticeable when I lost my job, driver's license, etc. in February of that's when they first started. I didn't lose my job and stuff until 2000. And I'm not yet 65. So I think it doesn't matter. Anyway, and current diagnosis is mild cognitive impairment with vascular and Lewy body symptoms.
Okay, thank you. And Lonnie?
I'm Lonnie Schicker, and I'm from St. Louis, Missouri. I got diagnosed with mild cognitive impairment and early onset Alzheimer's. I guess I was 58, and it was in 2015 when I was a professor up at Minnesota State. And my students told me that I seemed confused at times. So that's what took me to the doctor to begin with. And I've been diagnosed with 5 different types of dementia. So it's been kind of a pretty remarkable ride. when you go to, they send you to someone else and they give you a different diagnosis and then a different diagnosis, and it's frustrating, I think.
Very much so. And as people are listening, they can hear how many times people have had multiple diagnoses. This is not something easy to diagnose, and a lot of doctors still out there don't even tell some people when they have a diagnosis either. That's also another issue. But today we're going to be talking about the weather. And so I think I'm going to start with True, if you don't mind kicking us off on how do you deal with weather changes?
Well, to start with, I should probably say that for the first 10 or maybe even 15 years of dealing with dementia symptoms, I still enjoyed thunder and lightning. Now it very much intensifies my symptoms. I get more hallucinations, which are quite a bit of a problem. And everything about routine goes out the window when it comes to preparing for storms and during storms. And I don't deal well at all with power outages now. The lights and stuff being in different positions just sets my world on end.
Anything else you wanted to add? Or that pretty much cover it?
Not that I can think of right now.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. I am going to go ahead and throw this to Christine next.
For me, I watch the weather closely because it really impacts my day-to-day functions. Low weather systems, if I don't watch them, I will end up just in bed because I can't function at all. If I sort of feel the effects of it coming and I get my sun lamps on and I do all the things to help alleviate that, I can manage better. Up here in Canada, our daylight hours really decreased through these fall and winter months. So I have to live with sun lamps because if I don't, I don't function, and it creates a lot of brain fog, creates a lot of more confusion for me, and a really high level of fatigue. And the fatigue is unbelievable. I don't know if anybody else feels the fatigue, but I do. And the changing of the weather and the changing of the seasons. And when they do the time change, it probably takes me a month for my system to sort of settle into that because it affects me so badly. It would be better for me if they just left that alone and my system moved with the natural progression of the sun going up and down and all of those things. So yeah, it's a big part of my world for sure.
Thank you, Christine. Why don't we go up to Mark here? And if you don't mind sharing how it affects you, if it affects you.
Well, it seems like weather and season are two separate categories for me. Weather doesn't bother me so much. I've always looked forward to a good storm. I enjoy the thunder and lightning shows that we get, and I'm looking forward to the snow. As we're moving from fall into winter. So that aspect doesn't really bother me so much. The changing of the seasons bothers me on a different level though, because living with dementia, makes you, or makes me anyways, want to appreciate each day that I have even more, not to take your days for granted. And, when the seasons start to change, there's a part of me that mentally goes to a place where I look at, gosh, I had wanted to get A, B, and C done, this past season, and I missed out on it for whatever reason. And, and that can send me down a darker path unless I kind of back that up with, but look at X, Y, and Z that I did accomplish during that season. So, so it's different for me to, as far as distinguishing between how weather affects me and how seasonal change affects me.
Well, thank you very much, Mark. Appreciate that. Lonnie, how about you?
I don't really, I'm not too affected by the change in weather. What I am affected by, somebody else just said this, is when daylight savings ends, that it gets darker so much earlier, and it makes me feel depressed. And I also have adjustment problems that'll make me start feeling a little more confused. And I really have trouble at night with hallucinations. And I do notice that they increase if there's something like a thunderstorm, something that wakes me up out of a sound sleep. Thunderstorms don't bother me, they don't scare me, but I do notice that they increase my hallucinations. And so I think overall weather doesn't bother me, but the change in darkness and light it bothers me a little bit.
Okay, great. Lori?
Yeah, I think I definitely feel the change in seasons. I think it's probably, as I've read, that it's because of the decrease in sunlight, so your body needs more vitamin D. So I have my handy dandy sun lamps around that I use to help me out. I love a good thunderstorm. I think they're just good thunderstorm is just God's fireworks. It's just brilliant. And they're free. You can just watch it for free. So I love watching the thunder or the lightning, watching the lightning. But on days like today, where it's just kind of cloudy and gloomy, I definitely feel the impact. And plus, I think the pressure change impacts me, first off with allergies, and secondly, just with the gloomy feeling can really get out of control. So it's constantly trying to figure out how to maintain my upbeat presence and how to keep myself going, even when there's days it's so gloomy. I just like, why do I want to get out of bed? I just want to stay right where I am. It's nice and cozy and warm, and plus the change in routine. I mean, Roy and I were walking 1.5 miles twice a day, and now it's rainy, it's getting chilly, and so that whole change of routine and pattern really has an impact. The lack of exercise, of course, always makes you feel sluggish, but then you add to that just everything's different now. And True, I think, was saying about when the electric goes out, and that's a definite. We actually got a generator because I get too confused when the lights go out. And so we hooked up to the generator as the lights I always leave on at night, one light in each room. So yeah, definitely the change of seasons definitely has an impact.
Thank you. And Creaky, how about you?
Well, Corpus Christi, Texas doesn't really have seasons. Down here, we're pretty much like, it's been in the 80s all week, and grateful for that. We're having a big storm coming in. I think it's going to be in the mid 80s, so. And we started off before we started recording saying, and I'm like, well, I'm not affected by any of this. Come on. I am, just not physically, and I think it was Christine and maybe Mark, being, the routine, the lack of routine. That hits me big time. I used to do landscaping stuff. So if I had bad weather, I can't do this job or this job. But then what I have to do is get my little brain going. How can I work in this schedule with that schedule? And I've really lost a lot of, thinking skills lately. It's almost impossible. And then with my lack of memory, it just goes away. So, which is good, I guess. I don't let it affect me to the point of not getting out of bed, of not functioning, of not living life. But it does affect me. And I do love the storms. And I think Christine was the one that said, yeah, well, I love the storms. It's just this. And I'm like, oh, yeah, me too. So that's it.
Mark, go ahead.
Wanted to add to what Creaky and Laurie and maybe some others had commented on about, getting out of routines and how the weather and the change of seasons can cause that to happen. And yeah, as much as I said earlier, I love storms and everything, they can kind of jolt you out of your daily routine, which is, as we know, is so important for us. What I find, I need to have something I can fall back into, an interest, a hobby that kind of grounds me as I'm weathering the storm of being out of my routine. Whether, for me, it would be, music appreciation or art and photography appreciation. While I'm enjoying the storms, having something that just kind of a personal interest that kind of envelops me during that period.
Okay, great. Kate, how about you? We haven't heard from you yet.
Well, I get agitated, especially when it rains and it snows. And even though I come from a country where there are no seasons other than the monsoon rain, I keep on thinking of my kids. When are they coming back from school? They used to come back about this time, and you miss them. Now they're all over the world. And it's like, oh, if there's a storm, we all always gather together and, say, oh my goodness, and on top of all that, that depresses me, especially when my kids were overseas. And things were not very safe overseas where they were. So, and then I have seasonal affective disorder, SAD. This has been going on for 30-something years, maybe. And I saw a therapist and says, Kate, some people come in earlier in the year than you do. But then there's no medication for that. I just have to, leave that, the symptoms of seasonal affective disorder, seasons change. So there's a buddy of mine who's not here today, and we find that we are awake all night long about the same time. And so it's good. There's someone to, talk to, that I'm reading, so just don't bother me for now, okay? So he said, okay, be that way or something, but you can talk all night, but then you just learn. I've gone without sleep for 72 hours sometimes when the seasons change. And last year I was outside and I saw one leaf falling from the tree. And I was like stunned. One leaf, and it's yellow. I came right inside and I said, oh my gosh, it's fall already. And I refuse to go out. I won't do my gardening. That's how it affects me. You know, like we say, everyone is different. And I started getting very anxious. Of course, I have that light that Lori has. It didn't do anything for me. Had it for years. It was prescribed, a huge one. Guess who used it? My cat, to warm the, you know, to keep warm. My cat was sitting on it. That was the purpose of that big light. And also, I think I have something else. Yes, depression, mood swings, and you know, when it gets gloomy, even when seasons have not changed, I start to get sundowning. I started sundowning about 3 years ago, and about 4 or 5 o'clock, some of my friends call me when I started sundowning from all over America. And actually, I got a call from Peter in England. They tried to cheer me up, talk to me, let the sundowning pass, you know, but sometimes it stretches for quite a while. And I feel for the caregivers, because at one time I was working in skilled nursing, and I saw how horrible the patients were dealing with sundowning. And I thought I knew everything until I experience it myself now. It's a very, 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 I can't describe feeling. Like you hit rock bottom. Don't do anything. And since I'm recuperating from biopsies, surgeries, and all of that, I just read. I don't care what my house looks like right now, because agencies are short of staff, and so I cannot get help. So let it be. So that's all I have to share.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to mention, because light got brought up, I did interview somebody on Alzheimer's Speaks Radio, and it's getmebright.com, and they have these beacon lights. And they had, I want to say it was a neurologist that was on with us as well, but they talk, you know, just even on their homepage about adopting healthy habits and reducing the risk of Alzheimer's by 40%. And they have something with this pulse of this light. It's not just a light, but it pulses, but it's not like a strobe light or anything that anyone's going to notice, but it triggers something in the brain. And so for some people, they put these around their house, and they look like almost like little speakers and stuff with it. But I found it really fascinating. I had talked with them before, but really help people stay engaged and, you know, not get so down and depressed, which, you know, happens with the seasonal affective disorder, you know, well known as SAD, you know, just for that reason. With that. So I thought I would mention that because sometimes people don't know where they can get those lights. Christine?
I
You're
just
mute.
wanted to touch on something that Kate triggered. Something else that really affects me, and it took me a long time to become really aware of it, is the moon. When and I mean, I know this from working in nursing, how the moon impacts people, but I didn't realize it was impacting me. And then I started paying attention when it is coming close to a full moon, and for days after a full moon, I don't sleep. I'm awake all night long. Doesn't matter how much I want to go to sleep. I don't sleep, and my brain just goes and goes, and I can't shut it off. And then it goes away. And it happens every single time we're coming into that phase of a full moon. So that's another impact of, you know, what's going on in our environment.
Anybody else affected by the moon?
Yes. And I didn't want to say it because the Chinese people they always look at the moon and the stars, and their ears are all messed up and everything. I thought, well, it's just me, it's just because I'm Chinese. I feel like it's because the moon is aware and all that. And then I went like, hey, yesterday I was so depressed and angry. And I realized that because somebody told me, oh, you should see the moon tonight. Like, I really want to see a moon that's red. Even a regular moon is already making me, go crazy, And I did notice it at first, but then gradually, because, there's folklores and all kinds of things that say if there's a moon, the dogs start barking and all that kind of stuff. So I thought, well, it's just all in my head. But no, it does happen. The moon affects me. Yes.
I'm going to go to Mark and then to True.
Oh, I was just raising my hand to the question. Yeah, the moon definitely has an effect on me. Kind of like what Christine was saying, cuts down on my sleep. Well, I like to look at it as I have more energy because, I can be working on projects at hours that I'm normally asleep. So, and that's something I've noticed for a long time, not just since I've been diagnosed. And to what Kate said about all the folklore and the mythology behind the effect of the moon in nature and in Mother Nature. I remember what was his name? Joseph Campbell, famous professor of mythology, and he pointed out that folklore and mythology, if you go back far enough, they do have some basis somehow or another in fact or in history, and then as time goes by, the story starts to get distorted. But yeah, there is definitely enough evidence to support the idea that the moon does affect human behavior.
Great. True, you wanted to add something?
Well, as Kate put it, it's all in our head. Our symptoms, our abilities and disabilities when it comes to cognitive stuff is all in the head. And head is how much % water. So the pull of the moon is bound. It is, I forget the word. It is sure to do it, sure to create some effects at any rate in different people with different effects. I'll be in chat and we will notice that, all of us had problems last night, almost all of us. And you know what? There was the moon was, sometimes I think can be a big part of that.
I agree. The moon, the solar flares, you ask any police officer, hospital, healthcare worker, birthing rooms, funerals, funeral homes, they will all tell you they see an uptick. And, a lot of people say they can't sleep. Other people say they have more energy just at different times of the day. It depends on how you want to do it. I know some people will say that they can't process. They feel stuck. And there's stuff they want to do, but they just don't have the motivation, to do it. And I know for me, it affects me greatly. And I've just learned to kind of go with the flow and try to plan for the full moon. My electronics go crazy usually, and all kinds of stuff. But when you pay attention to it, I think you'll notice some things. Lonnie, how about you? Have you noticed anything with full moons?
Yes. And, I'm an old ICU nurse too, so I can tell you that that is not a lie. Things change, and we would have an influx of patients, have a really critical night, and someone would say, there's a full moon. So it definitely does change things. And I guess we know that it affects it affects the ocean. There's so much that a full moon affects. And so the more I pay attention to it now, the more I see that my hallucinations are much worse when we're getting near a full moon. And I can feel them easing up as the moon changes. So yeah, definitely the moon phases. And when some people that you say that to, they think you're crazy, but it really does affect things.
Mhm. Creaky, how about you?
So I thrive on the moon. Living down here on the water, I love it. Our whole family, our entire lives, we are moon people. We'll go watch the moon rise, and the day before, the day after, in case it's cloudy, and all that kind of stuff. And what I get out of it, it's not that I get a bunch of really strong energies, but I do feel more energized, not to the point of the lack of sleep or anything like that. It is kind of a oneness. I can't even explain it. I pick up my mom 45 minutes away, my 91-year-old mom, and we go to the beach. Then we go do the moon thing, and then we have a sleepover at my little house. And it is just like the full package for me. But I do a lot around the moon.
Well, that's neat.
Yeah.
That's neat. Lori, how about you?
Somebody was talking about the folklore of the moon impacting animals, but it does. Where we live, we have coyotes. They're not real close, but man, I'll tell you, during a full moon, you hear them howling their stupid heads off. It's like, you're getting too close, go away, So they definitely are impacted by the moon, and I am too. I'll wake up at 2:00 in the morning, and that's it. I'm awake, I'm done. I'm not going back to sleep because there's no way it's going to happen. I think part of that is because of the light. A full moon gives off so much more light that it seems like it's not really night. In my head, it's not really night. I think my shift of confusion changes during the full moon cycle, in that I'll become more confused or disoriented during the day during a full moon cycle. So yeah, I think it's one of those things, just like the seasons. It definitely has an impact.
Yeah, I've heard more talk about solar flares too, and people saying that they feel the effect of the energy in solar flares as well, which I haven't noticed, but I haven't really tracked those. But when I talk with a friend, it's like, oh, okay, that makes sense now that what's going on. So yeah, it is interesting, and I think it's helpful for both those living with dementia and those caring for them to be aware of these different impacts, of the moon, of the weather, anything from the preparation to, during it, to the after effects. You guys have brought up a lot of great points for people to be aware of, and to understand that, they're not crazy in their own right. This is just something that happens to a lot of people that are affected by this. So is it the disease, or has it always been there and you're just noticing it more, maybe because coping skills have changed, adaptability? Lori?
What you're saying is pretty valid, because I do believe this has been here all along, but I never had to pay attention to things before. Whereas now I really need to focus on what causes my confusion or my disorientation to increase and decrease, and what strategies can we put into play. So before I just kind of could pawn it off, but now I have to be more acutely aware of everything. Family gatherings, how much does that impact me? Going to a store when it's crowded, how much does that impact me? And along that is also the weather, the full moon, the weather changes. How does that impact me? Looking back on life, you'd have days when you just felt gloomy or whatever. Could it have been the weather? Could it have been a full moon? Probably. But you were working, so you just said, okay, get over it and keep moving. But now, since it can impact my symptoms, I need to pay attention. I need to figure out what's causing me to be confused. Why? What's different? What's unique? What's changed? And so I think that's where starting to see the weather patterns helps to determine what's causing symptoms to increase. And that's important for us. If we want to continue to live independently and keep ourselves functioning, we need to figure out as many things as we can that are causing our dementia symptoms to increase.
Yep, that whole cause and effect is really important. Christine?
Just to tie in what Lori was saying, I think probably in this chat, that's probably the biggest message we can give to people is the importance of how we ourselves need to learn to pay attention to those things because it gives us the best chance of improving our quality of life on a day-to-day basis. So thanks for highlighting that so well, Lori. And it's true, when we do that, and if others around us learn to understand and we are willing to talk about it to them, it helps them be able to better understand the environmental and seasonal things that are impacting us so that they can ensure as well that they're allowing us to do what we need to do because of those effects in our day-to-day managing.
Great. Kate, you had your hand raised?
Yes. It used to be when somebody says, hey, Kate, you want to go to the mall? It's not only COVID, I just 4 o'clock. No, I can't go anywhere anymore. Why? Because it's 4 o'clock. I went like, what's mean 4 o'clock? Because when I first started sundowning, it was around that time, So it says something it's my inner clock somewhere that tells me that after 4 o'clock, I'm not going outside. I'm not going anywhere, And if I go, I'm angry because people say, come on, let's just go, You'll be fine. How did they know I'm going to be fine? I'm not fine. You don't know that I am not fine because it's 4 o'clock. You are fine. And you think that just because you are taking me to a happy place, I am going to be fine. I'm not fine because it's 4 o'clock. And also, I noticed this year, I go to bed. Doesn't mean I sleep. I go to bed at about 9 o'clock. It used to be I go to bed at 2 o'clock because I can't wait I have a ritual now. I have a ritual. I have to do this, 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 and this. I read this book, I read my devotions, and then I go online and I start reading all my World War II books, I have a ritual. And I went like, wow, this is so weird. After you do it for a while, then you notice it, and just like we are like middle stage dementia, let's say, but end stage dementia, late stage dementia, my goodness, there are different people in the day. At night, they are different. They are so different. Because I had patients that I always dressed them, put on your tie, and I like doing things like that. At night, once there was a tornado, so I couldn't get home because the trees were falling. So I turned around and I went back to work, and I saw this is a place that's affiliated with the university. I saw a professor walking around just like with his deep pen, and he was ripping off his IV. There was blood everywhere. I went like, oh my goodness. They said, now you know what he's like at night. And then there's a lot of mourning and crying, at night before they go to bed. I don't know if that is because of the sundowning or because the time change.
Yeah.
It's darker.
Okay,
I don't
I'm
know.
going to go to Mark and then to Lori. Mark, you had your hand raised.
I think I might be going off topic a little bit, so I apologize for that. But I can relate a little bit to what Kate was just saying about that 4 o'clock cutoff. Sometimes I can make it to 5, but there reaches a point, and I don't really look at it as sundowning myself. It's more of mentally fatigued. My brain is tired. I've spent the entire day working on staying on top of things, having my brain function at a higher level, because let's face it, those are, us living with dementia, it's harder for us to stay on top of our game. And come the end of the day, I'm mentally drained, I'm mentally tired, and that usually hits me around 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I think I had a phone conversation, I think, with Lori a few nights ago, and it was later than that. It might have been 7 or 8 o'clock, and we had a good conversation and came up with a good idea. And I said, "Yeah, but could you do me a favor, Lori? Can you text me that in the morning? Because I'll never remember it at this point of the night." And but it's more of it. I don't look at it as sundowning as much as I look at it as being, just mentally tired after a long day. And then the only other comment I wanted to make from earlier in our discussion about the moon is, the Latin the Latin origin of the word lunar and lunacy come from the same thing. So even back in old, ancient Latin times, doctors and scientists understood the connection between people's behavior and the phases of the moon.
Great, thank you. Lori?
I agree with Mark. I don't look at sundowning, I look at rundowning. Because I think what happens is we've been working so hard, our brain has been working so hard to help us to speak, to help us to do things, to help us get dressed, to help us whatever. We've just been our brain has constantly been running. And it's like we've run a marathon all day. And then boy, by late afternoon, it's just like, my brain's tired, and understandably so. We should be tired. But I wanted to talk also about, we were talking about how we have to be so aware of things that impact us all the way around, whether it's weather or whatever. For me, moving from Pennsylvania to Alabama has caused a lot of confusion for me. One of my biggest confusions has been going from Eastern time to Central time. I am confused all the time as to what time it is, and people send a message saying, "Can you join me at 1 o'clock?" Oh, sure, I can do that. Well, they're talking about 1 o'clock Eastern, and I have something going on at that time, but I've found that has caused so many issues for me. Roy's tried doing maps and charts, and he's got things posted where you guys can't see, but he's got things posted, and I'll say, what time is that Central? I'll go, look at your chart. What time is that Central? I can't, my mind's not switching. But not only is it not knowing what time it is, but just the change of the light and it's like, it's not supposed to be dark yet. It's not supposed to be light yet. Whatever has really thrown me off quite a bit, not to mention just not knowing where I am, not having any friends, not knowing how to get to the grocery store. so many things really, really impact us, but change of season, change of time is big also.
And I think that throws pretty much everybody. I use that time conversion table all the time. I just have it saved as a favorite and I plug it in because when you're talking, especially with you guys, you're talking with people all around the world, and not just within the United States. And then, come spring and fall, it's like, okay, not everybody springs ahead and falls back at the same time, or some areas don't at all. And it does get confusing. True's kept me on track on that a couple of times with South Africa and some other areas and things when I haven't converted with that. Lonnie, anything that you wanted to add?
No, I don't think that I have anything. I just, I will add this. I noticed that evening hours, I have much more trouble keeping track of time than I do during the day. I'm always shocked when somebody tells me what time it is. I think it should be much earlier.
Okay.
So I think really that's time-wise, that's the only issue that I have, is that I just can't seem to keep track of the time at night.
Okay. Creaky, anything else you wanted to add?
Something I've been holding on to about the weather. And I believe it was Mark that said that really resonated with me. I was saying I wasn't affected, and and then you had said something like have something like music or art, or have something already pre-planned in case of. And so my normalcy is to it's raining, go to bed, not necessarily depressed, but just go lay down, don't do anything. Oh yeah, well, I could play my piano, I could do this and this, but to have something pre-planned really helped out a lot.
Right. True, anything you'd like to add? Nope, you're good. Anybody else? Otherwise, we'll go ahead and wrap up. Go ahead, Kate.
I agree with Mark and Lori. About 2:00, I start getting really, I need to wind down. I'm very, very tired. It doesn't take much for me to get very tired. And part of it is my immune system, and now I do not want to do anything. I don't even want to cook. And it's terrible because Thanksgiving is coming up, and that, the stress is coming already. Thanksgiving is coming up, holidays and all that, and yes, I start getting very tired at 2:00. And then there's a difference there. I feel my body all get tired, but then the sundowning is the gloominess outside. It's very, very different. But yes, I agree that, you get tired because, even I'm a gardener. I call myself a farmer because my gardening has grown. And so this past 2 years, I've done less and less because of the feeling tired at about doing a lot in the daytime.
I have a question for all of you, which I think it's interesting to me. I don't know if it is to you, but what term do you feel more comfortable with? Sundowning? I like the rundowning, but I like the brain fatigue too. Mark, which do you prefer? Or is there something else?
I think rundowning.
Okay. Creaky, how about you?
Yeah, something like that. Rundown.
True?
I think some people's symptoms are so severe that they're uncomfortable with calling it anything to do with fatigue or being run down because it's an entire different family of symptoms. And it actually can be a pretty contentious thing, this question that you just asked.
Okay.
But in my personal experience, at least at this stage, it's more of a rundowning.
Okay. Lonnie, how about you?
I definitely would say that mine is brain fatigue. I do a lot all day. And then I do notice the time when I just can't think things through clearly. I don't find like a hard time that happens. I'm not much of a sleeper. Nobody in my family is. We all sleep a couple of hours, get up at night. When I was growing up, it wasn't uncommon to see someone like up listening to music or doing dishes or whatever at like 3 a.m. and then go back to bed. And I've carried that on, but honestly, my entire family is like that. So I notice it the same about 2 to 3 in the afternoon, I get exhausted, but I have to be really careful when daylight savings time ends, because if I feel like taking a nap, then when I wake up, it's dark, and that's very confusing for me. So if I'm going to take a nap in the winter, I always try to take a nap around noon so that when I wake up, it's still light out.
Okay, great. Kate, how about you? Is there a preference of sundowning, rundowning, or brain fog? Or brain-
I just call it sundowning because when you're at work, everybody calls it sundowning, you know, in a facility. It's the old term, you're sundowning, you're sundowning, you know what I mean? But honestly, I just say I am tired. Don't bother me. I don't have one word for this, okay? Don't bother me. I'm really tired because I need to be alone. I just need to be alone. I'm fatigued. I need to be alone. Mostly it's called I need to be alone.
Okay. Okay. And Lori, your preference is the rundowning, I would gather?
You know what? I used to sell mobility products to people that were physically challenged. And our clients were having a discussion one day about, am I crippled? Am I disabled? Am I handicapped? Which do you prefer? And one of my customers said, I don't care if they called me crippled, disabled, or handicapped. It's not going to get me out of this chair. And when they figure out a way to word it to get me out of this chair, then I give a rip. And I kind of look at things the same. That's why I look at all kinds of things. If it's sundown, rundown, brain fart, brain run out of energy, to me, it's the brain is tired. The brain is fatigued. I call it rundowning, but the words don't bother me. The only thing with sundowning is people think of it as a totally related to the sun type thing. And I don't see that. I think people need to realize too, the brain's tired. Just let the brain rest.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I asked the question, because I think it's the rundown or the brain fatigue is more descriptive. Even though the time is important, I think it's more descriptive for people to understand why it's happening. I'm going to go to Mark and then to True.
I think by raising the question, Laurie, you bring up a bigger point in that we often have to remind not only others that aren't living with dementia, but we have to remind ourselves that when you meet one person with dementia, you've only met one person with dementia. You know, we've heard that thousands of times. So everybody's symptoms are going to be different. And that goes for that end of the day, whatever you want to call it, sundowning, brain fatigue, rundowning. And I think by giving it a label, you're defining a certain set of symptoms that aren't necessarily going to fit everybody, because everybody's dementia is unique.
Yeah.
And that's where the contention that True brought up, that's where the contention begins. And by giving it a broader name like brain fatigue, it all boils down to your brain is tired. How your brain reacts to the fact that it's tired will differ from person to person. but it all boils down to your brain is tired.
Mhm. Great. True.
Oh, I'm sorry, Drew, go ahead.
Actually, I theorized that some of the sundown symptoms are actually not based on the fatigue. I think that it could, some of my friends that I have seen, they have, like I say, a full different family of symptoms. And that's why I don't consider I have sundowning. And I
Can you
don't
give some
believe that
examples?
everybody has sundowning. What?
Can you give some examples of what you've seen with your friends, what they've talked about?
I can't think of them right now. I can think of people and I'm not going to do that.
Yep.
But I can't think of the specific symptoms.
Okay, that's okay.
But I do theorize that it's two different, it can be. What some people call sundowning is different than what other people call sundowning. I think that's a strong possibility and needs to be considered.
Great, thank you.
Thank
Kate, we'll
you,
let you
Drew.
go ahead and wrap up for us.
Yes, I will. There is a difference because I have seen it. I live with it myself, and there's a totally different kind of symptoms, like Drew says. Sometimes you feel like you want to rock yourself more, and it's not because you're tired. There's things that you want to do more, or you feel like you're purposeless. You don't think about that all day long. But when it's sundowning time, so you say, okay, I am just fatigued. But then when you reach the point, not everybody has sundowning. Where you have sundowning, you will know that things have changed. You are not only tired, but then there's a restlessness in you. There's a restlessness that is not only fatigue. Fatigue is you want to lie down, you want to slow down. There's a restlessness somewhere inside of you.
Okay, thank you.
That's all I've got to say.
Lori, let's see. Well, Lonnie, you had your hand up, and then Lori, I wanted you to. I think you were the one that put in the comment about Kate's article. So we'll go to Lonnie first, and then to Lori.
I do think that the term sundowning bothers me. I think it's kind of an archaic term that actually it originates back when psychiatric patients, they noticed, would act differently at night. But I think that people in general, if you say sundowning, their idea is that as soon as the sun goes down, people get confused. And so they say, no, they're not sundowning because it's the middle of the night. In the ICU, they use that term. They don't use it anymore, but they used to use it very loosely because sometimes patients they're fine all through the evening, and all of a sudden at 11 p.m. they are just totally confused. So it almost should be called like night downing or something, because you never know what time of night that it's going to happen. So sundowning can be a little confusing of a term for families and for caregivers. So it's probably, I don't know, I just find the term very archaic. And I do think that, your energy slipping away and all of those things are what we would commonly think of as sundowning, but people who are not around it and haven't experienced it and then suddenly do get confused by that term.
Okay, great. Lori, did you want to mention Kate's article?
Kate Swaffer wrote an article in 2019, people with dementia who get tired are sundowning. What a load of rubbish. Kate Kate Swaffer form for sure. Al Power has also written about the sundowning. And as Lonnie was saying, the problem with sundowning is that it is archaic and came from what was then called mental institutions. And basically, it gives the concept that it's only going to happen as the sun's going down. And that's definitely not the case. It can happen at 2 o'clock in the morning. It can happen at 11 o'clock in the morning. And the brain being overly tired and fatigued can cause all kinds of symptoms, an increase in confusion. I have aphasia at times. And usually it's at night, but that's probably because my brain has really worked a very hard day. So I think I really look at what Kate Swaffer and Al Power have started saying, not started, they've been doing it for a while, but their comments on sundowning and how we kind of need to stop saying that.
Don't like the term sundowning. Honestly, I really don't like the word. That's why I said it's time for me to be alone, and don't push it because I'm going to lose it, and so that's why I said there is a difference. If the moon affects you that way, and then the sun goes down and you're affected by that, then so be it, but I do not like the word sundowning. It's just something that stuck with me because I work with, people that always say, oh, sundowning. For me, I've got a totally different, I just want to be alone thing, because sometimes, because I have behavior variant, I really think your behavior actually change because you have behavior variant than the other variants. You know what I mean? Because I get really angry sometimes when I say I want to be alone. Oh, come on. I want to be alone. Or else I might get really agitated. So anyway.
I like your phrase. Let's just call it the don't push my button time.
There you go.
Me time.
Well, what a great conversation. You guys gave us so many wonderful insights. I think this is going to be helpful to a lot of people, and maybe people will start thinking about another phrase. I know there can be a lot of energy put into changing a name, and as soon as you change it, somebody else isn't happy with it either and wants to change it into something else. So I think, again, this platform works really well to get people aware and acknowledging what's going on, because that's really the most important versus, in my eyes, versus the verbiage, is getting them to understand and be aware of what's happening. So thank you all. You're all brilliant. Had like I said, I learned a lot from you today. So, as I always do. So thanks again, and we will talk soon.
Thank you.
Yep. Bye-bye.